corridor carved in black glass descends beneath the Calixis conclave. No plaque names it. No record of its construction survives. It breathes recycled air sour with machine oil, and the static whine of imperfect vox scramblers gnaws the senses with every step. This is the first trace in any extant archive where the Ocularians emerge from conjecture into fractured record. A single chamber sealed behind an adamantium iris, known among the Ordo Hereticus as the Obsidian Threshold. The fragment that survives describes no procession of robed inquisitors, no formal declaration of legitimacy. Instead, a lone figure enters, bareheaded, shaven to the skull, eyes obscured by a band of grey steel etched with catechisms of abnegation. In one gauntlet he carries a reliquary of scorched bone, the origin of which is redacted even in the sigillite cipher. In the other, he bears a data loom whose threads pulse in a rhythmic dissonance, as though it resists translation by any mortal tongue. The sigil on his gorget is no known badge of the conclave. It is an eye crowned in thorns, scorched into the ceramite in a style too ancient to ascribe to any of the ordos. When the chamber seals, no witnesses remain. But in the aftermath, when conclave custodians unseal the iris centuries later, the walls are sheathed in layered inscriptions, thin plates of synth metal riveted into the obsidian, each etched in a hand no cipher priest has ever succeeded in reducing to stable text. There is only one consensus among those who have dared to examine these plates. They are predictions. Each line begins with a date and ends in dissolution, language collapsing under the weight of an unspoken lexicon. At the foot of this chamber rests a single relic, a staff formed from the fused vertebrae of something too large to be human, capped with a lens of opaque crystal. Under the scrutiny of 100 archivists, the lens remains dark. Only once, in the year 950 of M41, does it ignite, casting a circle of pale illumination across the plates. In that moment, the custodians stationed in the conclave's lower tiers hear a vox transmission bleed into every channel, no matter how secured. No encryption resists it. No shrine shield repels it. The voice is neither synthetic nor wholly alive. It utters only 7 syllables before the transmission fails, the chamber sealing in darkness for another century. But those syllables enter the conclave record, reproduced exactly across 9 separate noospheric strata. I am the first Ocularian. Nothing further escapes. No plea for recognition. No appeal to doctrine. Only that single declaration, etched in vox-scorched script across every archivum within 100 leagues. In the wake of this event, the Inquisitorial Synod convenes in secret, sealing all trace of the obsidian threshold beneath layers of censure. But among those who guard the sealed iris, a conviction festers that the chamber still listens, that the black glass remembers the shape of each footfall, and that behind the sealed portal, the eye in the crown of thorns never closes. In the highest vaults of the conclave's black library, parchment slivers preserved in stasis fields record the sanctioned rites of the Ocularians. They are not codices bound in purity seals. They are not doctrinal treatises reviewed by the ordos. Each fragment is a confession, torn from the mouths of acolytes who endured the initiatory process and emerged half catatonic. Every retelling fractures differently, as though each witness beheld an augury beyond translation. The first stage begins with the deprivation of light. For a span measured in subjective decades, the aspirant is sealed inside a null vault whose walls are alloyed with pariah-cast marrow, draining all psychic resonance. In that absence, the mind collapses inward, stripped of the Emperor's radiance. Some perish before the second stage begins, their vital organs dissolving in psychosomatic surrender. Those who persist are drawn into the photic chamber. Here, rows of sanctioned psychers kneel in iron cradles. Their optic nerves are severed and replaced with cables linked to the great hieromantic loom. The loom itself is a relic beyond classification. Its origins predate the Calixis Conclave's foundation by uncounted centuries. It winds in frequencies that shear thought into filaments. Each filament is spooled across the psycher's minds, encoding visions none can fully interpret. The aspirant is forced to drink the waters of the loom basin, a solution saturated with microcogitators and the liquefied cortexes of executed heresiarchs. Within an hour, synaptic invasion begins. Memories liquefy. Identity dissolves into a lattice of alien conjecture. What emerges is neither fully human nor machine. In this liminal state, the aspirant's visions are catalogued in silence. No scribe records them in ink. No adept deciphers their structure. The Ocularians themselves do not claim to understand the totality. It is enough that the visions manifest, anchoring their legitimacy in suffering. When the trance finally recedes, the aspirant's eye sockets are sealed in golden solder. The rite demands no explanation. To the Ocularians, the price of sight is blindness. Only through the second mind, the inner eye, can the future be beheld without corruption. Witness accounts preserved on scriptorum slate suggest that the new Ocularian is not welcomed among their brethren as a supplicant. Instead, they are regarded with wary silence. Each initiation is understood to fracture the consensus further, as if every vision drags the faction closer to an event none can name. It is this doctrine, accepting the dissolution of sanity as a sacrament, that earns the Ocularians their most enduring condemnation. Among Puritan inquisitors, the rite is proof that the sect treads the same path as the apostate seers of Prospero. Among radicals, it is envied, a sanctioned madness that no lesser order dares to replicate. And yet, despite centuries of denunciation, the Ocularians endure. Their initiation chambers remain active beneath the conclave's black library. The loom still shudders with stolen memory. And every decade, another voice emerges from the null vault, blind and radiant, speaking predictions that no one fully believes until it is far too late. In the fortified archives beneath Hive Sibelius, a single ossuary vault bears the sigil of an eye-weeping coiled thorns. Its threshold is guarded by 6 sanctionaries who do not speak, do not rest, and do not question the purpose of their vigil. Within lies a collection of human hides, flayed, cured, and stretched across iron frames. Each is etched with the hieromantic lexicons of the Ocularians, engraved in microglyphs so dense that even a single square inch demands a lifetime of study. These flesh codices are not trophies. They are living records. Every skin once belonged to an acolyte who served as a vessel of the visions. When an Ocularian's trance convulses into clarity, the revelations must be anchored before they collapse into oblivion. The adepts trained for this purpose endure the ritual known as recursive omophagia. They are made to ingest slivers of pre-existing prophecy, tatters of text soaked in amniotic preservative, so that when the moment of inscription arrives, their flesh already resonates with prior visions. The engraving itself is performed without anesthetic. The Ocularians consider pain a purifier, burning all mortal deceit from the moment of reception. Each incision is accompanied by intonations in a dialect no Mechanicus linguist has yet decoded, syllables that leave vox recorders charred or inert. As the lexicons unfold, witnesses report the ambient temperature plunges. Some claim the walls whisper in the same voice that spoke from the obsidian threshold. When the etching is complete, the acolyte does not die. They are bound in life suspension to preserve the living resonance of the text. In this state, neither corpse nor cognizant, they are known as the glass votaries. Each can survive in stasis for centuries, the inscriptions growing denser as new auguries are layered upon the old. The vault's curators have attempted countless times to translate the lexicons. Every endeavor ends the same way. The adepts tasked with interpretation spiral into fragmented identities, their memories consumed by recursive overlays. Some are reduced to drooling vessels. Others vanish into the noosphere, their neural signals dispersing like ash in wind. To the Ocularians, this is a necessary consequence. Only through sacrifice can the skeins of destiny be woven into continuity. Their detractors call it butchery masquerading as prophecy, yet even they cannot deny the accuracy of certain predictions. Wars unspoken yet already enumerated, assassinations foreshadowed in sigils no other cipher could unlock. Among the most infamous of these auguries is the flensed Concord, a trifold sequence of incisions describing a single event, the extinction of a major Calixian subsector by a shadow too vast to name. The lexicons remain incomplete. Each attempt to finish the final lines has claimed the life of another scribe. Still, the Ocularians return to the vault, pressing their palms against the tanned remnants of their own dead, whispering questions no one else dares to ask. It is said that in the last moment of lucidity, the glass votary's eyes open behind the soldered seals, and what they see burns deeper than any blade can carve. No conclave remains untouched by the gravity of the Ocularians' existence. Even the most reserved masters of the Ordo Xenos find their silence brittle when faced with auguries that claim to predate the Calixis Sector itself. Yet for every Inquisitor who deems their visions indispensable, 2 others consider them a threat that must be extinguished before it can metastasize. This antipathy erupts in cycles, each more violent than the last. Among the sealed archives of the Scintillan Synod, a litany of censure records the culling attempts, internecine purges waged not against heretic cults or Xenos infiltrators, but against the Ocularians themselves. The most infamous of these conflicts unfolds in the year 890 of M41. In a vault beneath the heterodox gate, a convocation of Puritan inquisitors, 5 lords and 20 lesser acolytes, signs a writ of eradication. They declare the Ocularian doctrine a sanctioned heresy, arguing that the sect's reliance on predictive manipulation has become indistinguishable from demonic pact. Their assault begins in silence. Across 10 hidden refugia, sleeper kill teams are activated by encoded vox keys, each tasked with the same objective: neutralize the glass votaries, seize all etched prophecies, and terminate the surviving seers. The operation endures 7 hours. At first, it appears total. 8 refugia are breached and reduced to cauterized ruin, their data looms vitrified, their living archives butchered. Yet as dawn spreads over the bastions of the Inquisition, it becomes clear the purge is incomplete. 2 refugia remain inviolate. No kill team reaches their thresholds. The coordinates vanish from every cogitator in the purge fleet, as if excised from reality itself. In the aftermath, a Vox transmission bleeds across the Puritan channels. It contains no threat, no admission of guilt, only a litany of predictions recited in a voice none of the surviving Inquisitors recognize. Among them is a prophecy so precise in detail, so inexorable in consequence, that it reduces even the most hardened witch hunter to awed silence. In the final year of this century, the Pale Choir will ascend the vaulted crucible. They will bring with them a casket of obsidian, inside which lies a single eye, unblinking. To deny this is to deny your own dissolution. The Pale Choir remains unverified. No record identifies the vaulted crucible. Yet in the years that follow, Inquisitors tasked with suppressing the Ocularians die in patterns that echo the prophecy's cadence. Some vanish between warp transits, their vessels found adrift in black oceans. Others are incinerated in manufacturum detonations whose causes remain unsolved. One is discovered in the Prolix archives, his body folded upon itself like parchment. This is the price of prognostic war. To contest the future with those who consume it as sacrament is to wager one's own life against an outcome already inscribed. Even so, the Puritans do not relent. Each generation births a new coterie convinced that heresy dwells at the heart of the Ocularian dogma. Each fails to erase them entirely. And somewhere in the darkness of sealed vaults, the blind seers resume their vigil, untouched by condemnation, unbowed by slaughter. To them, every persecution is nothing but another proof of the visions. In the catacombs beneath the prose and data vaults, narrow corridors branch into chambers few have ever entered willingly. Each vault is shrouded in static interference that scours Auspex returns into unreadable haze. To step across the threshold is to abandon certainty, for no chronometer functions within the inner sanctum. Time becomes a speculation, measured only by the slowing of breath and the tightening of the skin. This is the domain of the glass votaries. They are never named aloud. Among the Inquisitors who have glimpsed them, it is agreed that to catalogue the votaries as assets or witnesses is to reduce them to a form they do not occupy. They are not the living, though each breathes. They are not the dead, though no pulse can be counted. They are neither archives nor oracles. but something more dangerous. A continuum of revelation etched in living flesh. Each votary is bound upon a steel crucible. The ligatures are permanent, bone fused to iron, sinew annealed by chemflame. Their torsos are stripped of skin, replaced with transparent laminates of plasteel beneath which their internal organs drift in partial suspension. To witness this is to confront the totality of the Ocularian doctrine. Knowledge so absolute, it requires the obliteration of the self. The inscriptions begin at the collarbones. Delicate microglyphs spiral downward in fractal continuity, interlacing with vascular tissue, braiding around the heart, wrapping the spine. No attempt to replicate the text in scriptum has ever succeeded. The glyphs shift as the observer's angle alters, refracting meaning in patterns that defy logic. Some scholars believe this distortion is not optical but temporal, each layer a record of a moment that has not yet transpired. Among the adepts assigned to study the votaries, there is a single consensus. The visions housed in these living reliquaries cannot be decoded without consequence. Even a moment of contemplation, an unguarded stare into the text, can fracture the mind along new axes. More than one archivist has awakened in the dark, murmuring lexicons that leave no trace on vox or parchment, only to collapse in spasmodic rigor. And yet, to the Ocularians, this sacrifice is a necessity. No prediction can be trusted if it is not anchored in flesh. Only through the agony of the votaries does augury attain permanence. Their existence is proof that knowledge requires more than faith. It requires abnegation so complete that not even the self survives unaltered. It is said that when an Ocularian requires confirmation of a vision, they approach the crucibles in darkness. No torch is lit, no rite is spoken. In that perfect silence, the seer lays a hand upon the transparent breastplate and waits. What passes between the votary and the hand upon the glass is never recorded. But witnesses who have survived the moment describe the same aftermath. The Ocularian departs in silence, and the votary's eyes flicker open for the span of a single heartbeat. No gaze meets theirs. The sockets are soldered, the nerves severed, and yet something observes, staring into a future no living eye could endure. In the year 871 of M41, a coterie of Ocularians convened beneath the southern annex of the Prozan data vaults. No record survives to explain why they gathered in that place, or why the usual rites of suppression were suspended. The only evidence of their presence is an encrypted distress broadcast that pulsed across every sanctioned channel, repeating a single phrase in a voice so distorted that no scholar has ever identified its owner. Witness the interval that devours all intervals. When the inquisitorial response arrived, the annex was sealed in a sheath of obsidian, vitrified by energies no Mechanicus adept could classify. Teams of Astartes from the Exorcist's chapter breached the outer vault with melter charges and entered a darkness unbroken by any lumen. Vox logs of that first descent record the staccato clatter of Auspex returns, fragmenting into static, and the sibilant murmurs of voices that did not belong to the living. They found no bodies, no traces of struggle, only a single hieromantic loom, blackened along its spools as if scorched from within. The loom's feed lines were fused into the surrounding plasteel floor, extending downward into a hollow no mapping rite had revealed. When the exorcists dared to peer into that chasm, their helm cams captured a final image before every optic died in unison. A chamber arrayed in concentric tiers of bone-white statues, each sculpted in the likeness of an Ocularian. No two were identical, yet each bore the same sigil where the heart should be, an unblinking eye, crowned in thorns. In the wake of the incursion, the conclave ordered the annex sealed. All survivors were subjected to progressive erasure of memory by Ordo Malleus cryptomancers, yet fragments remained, unbidden recollections of voices whispering the names of worlds unrecorded, the shape of dates that no imperial calendar recognized. Among those partial recollections, one has endured. The Astartes who led the breach, Captain Jadrus Taian, emerged with a single phrase etched into the inner surface of his helm, an inscription so fine that no tool marks could be discerned. The Concord is incomplete. The choir awaits. What Concord the message described remains unverified. The pale choir has never been conclusively identified. Yet in the decades that followed, the Ocularians ceased all petition to the conclave. No new seers presented themselves for sanction. No predictions were offered. Many among the Puritans believed the sect destroyed, sundered by the same revelations they had pursued into that abyss. But in hidden Vox channels, rumours persisted that the Ocularians had never left the vault, that in some unmeasured interval, they had crossed into a continuum beyond time, carrying their auguries with them. Those who dismiss such claims as superstition find themselves unable to explain why, on the final day of every year, the prose and data vaults resonate with a tone that no Vox scrambler can silence. It is the same frequency recorded in that first transmission. A sound like glass fracturing beneath a weight no architect could have foreseen. Every doctrine calcifies. Even among the Ocularians, whose creed is predicated on perpetual uncertainty, corruption seeded itself in the fissures between revelations. It is from these fractures that the Apostasian heresies emerged, an aggregation of doctrines so blasphemous that the Ordo Malleus has classified their mention as potential mimetic hazard. The first heresy bore no formal name. In the archives, it is only designated by the cipher Vesper Tertius. According to the redacted record, a seer of the Ocularians, known only as the Cantor of Ninefold Threads, achieved a state of recursive augury, visions that looped upon themselves in a lattice so dense that every subsequent trance deepened the same singular image. Witnesses to the Cantor's final convocation describe a vault lined in fractured mirrors, each reflecting a corridor of endless replication. Upon the floor, the Cantor's body lay in fetal contortion, the skin of the back split open by growths of filamentous ivory. From the rents in his flesh, an organ had emerged, an eye larger than any human skull, rimmed in lidless folds of warped sinew. The record ends with the vox capture of a final utterance, transcribed in glyphic notation. He shows me the synaptic ocean. I drink. I am not alone. This single confession proved sufficient to ignite a doctrinal schism. A conclave of Ocularians declared the Cantor's visions an authentic transmission from a future so vast it eclipsed all known timelines. Another faction argued it was proof of synaptic contamination, an infiltration of tyrannid noosphere into the human cortex. No consensus was ever reached. From this breach, a second heresy bloomed. Known as the doctrine of indivisible paths, it argued that no prediction could remain pure if limited to the human continuum. Its authors began an unrecorded correspondence with demonological savants, seeking to merge sanctioned divination with the infernal lexicons of the warp. Evidence of this unholy synthesis surfaced in the vaults of Perimunde, where a confiscated Ocularian reliquary was found to contain a fragment of a Librum Maleficarum, its vellum still wet with the blood of sacrificial augurs. Though the conclave ordered the reliquary incinerated, the Apostasian doctrine had already seeded itself among radicals hungry for revelation at any cost. In the years that followed, the conclave dispatched extermination cells to excise the contamination. 17 Ocularians vanished before capture. 8 were confirmed dead, their flesh vitrified in acts of mutual immolation. 3 were never accounted for. Among their hidden archives, a single axiom was etched into every surface, repeated in a spiral so dense it could only be read by uncoiling each page into meters of translucent film. The Concord will unify all strands, mortal, alien, infernal, all will speak the same vision. This is the final heresy, the dissolution of separation, the obliteration of categorical purity in the pursuit of a perfect augury. It is for this crime above all others that the Ocularians remain both necessary and intolerable. Seers whose hunger to know exceeds any allegiance, whose visions risk birthing new heresies even as they avert calamity. And somewhere in the vault sealed beneath the oldest precincts of the conclave, the Cantor's eye remains, watching. No covenant of the Ocularians is more disputed or more elusive than the Concord of Dissonance. It is neither a council nor a manifesto. To those who have tried to define it, the Concord is an event that has not occurred, a prelude etched across centuries, glimpsed only in the unaligned auguries of the faction's most isolated seers. According to fragmentary reports preserved by the Ordo Chronos, the Concord first materialized in predictions separated by entire generations. A single phrase, the dissonant unification, appears in at least 7 separate visions, each documented without knowledge of the others. These occurrences were scattered across the timelines of disparate Ocularian enclaves, their dates always inconsistent, their contexts unaligned. In the vaults of Commissar Prime, a conclave of archivists attempted to overlay the visions to reconstruct a coherent narrative. Their experiment lasted 4 months. On the 72nd day, every scribe in the project suffered identical neural infarctions, their last recorded utterance an unmodulated scream. The project was terminated. All surviving records were sealed in cryostasis, labeled only with a single caution. Proximity to convergence is escalation. Despite this interdiction, the Concord's implications continued to proliferate through rumor. Some claimed it was the culmination of all Ocularian prophecy, a moment when every divergent augury would resolve into a singular future. Others whispered it was an inversion, the instant when all visions would fragment into oblivion, severing every thread of foresight and plunging the Imperium into blind catastrophe. What little consensus has been achieved arises from a single detail. Each prophecy that references the Concord also references the Pale Choir. Never elaborated, never defined. Only the title, etched in the same impossible glyphs, woven through every record, as though mocking all attempts at exegesis. Among the most harrowing accounts is a Vox record retrieved from the wreckage of the Librarium Gnostic. The final transmission captures a voice, stripped of gender, resonant with layered frequencies, reciting an inventory of events that have no precedent in any archive. When the Pale Choir ascends, the Concord will seal. All fates will unfold in harmonic ruin. No eye shall close. The Librarium's destruction followed moments later, its walls imploding without thermal signature, its cogitator stacks liquefied by energies no savant has ever named. Even so, the Ocularians never renounced the visions. In their hidden sanctuaries, the blind seers continue to press inkless fingers to the vellum of living skin, inscribing futures no one else dares imagine. To them, the Concord is not a catastrophe. It is an inevitability, a final chord whose resonance will end all distinctions, between knowing and unknowing, between truth and blasphemy, between hope and annihilation. And in the darkness of the sealed vaults, there are those who claim that when the last syllable of the Concord is spoken, the Pale Choir will cease to be a prophecy. It will become a procession. Beneath the sealed strata of Scintilla's Archivum Obscura, a singular chamber persists in absolute seclusion. No surveyor cogitator has ever mapped its dimensions. No servitor patrol marks its threshold. To those sanctioned to remember its existence, it is known only as the Calixian Synopticon. It is here the Ocularians compile their most perilous visions, predictions too corrosive to share, too precise to discard. No index names them, no lexicon deciphers their structure. They are etched in a substrate of alloyed adamantium and memory crystal, each layer fused in a lattice of impossible complexity. To gaze into the Synopticon is to confront the culmination of all sanctioned divination, a convergence so dense that the boundary between record and event dissolves. Entry is not granted through petition or lineage. The threshold of the Synopticon requires a right of final witness. The seer who would enter must surrender all prior visions, each confession distilled into a sacrament of abnegation. This is no mere ritual of memory. The process is irreversible. Once the seer steps into the vault, no recollection returns unchanged. Their minds become refracted, as though each thought is now an echo of another's dream. Among the few who have emerged intact, no testimony aligns. One reports an ocean of living data, tides of luminous script rising to drown every distinction between past and future. Another recalls an orchard of eyeless trees, each bearing fruits carved with dates no imperial calendar can house. The most coherent account is also the most disquieting. A vision of an unending corridor lined in mirrored panels. every reflection the same figure, blindfolded, lips moving in silent unison. All futures converge, the witness whispered, before the final seizure claimed their life, but none diverge. For centuries, the Ordo Malleus has lobbied for the Synopticon's destruction. To the Puritans, its very existence is proof of a blasphemy that cannot be reconciled with any loyal creed. They argue that no human mind, no matter how sanctified, can contain such a compendium of prescience without collapse into damnation. Yet each petition to erase the vault fails. Some are lost in bureaucratic morass. Others vanish from the record altogether, the memory of their authors expunged by mechanisms no lexicographer can trace. And always, when the question is raised in conclave, an anonymous voice transmits across the noosphere, repeating the same refrain in vox tones scoured of all humanity. Erasure is impossible. The record endures. This is the final impasse of the Ocularian doctrine. Their predictions are too precise to disregard, too perilous to admit. The Synopticon is both their greatest triumph and their most irredeemable heresy, a monument to a future already collapsing into the present. Those who have seen the chamber never return unchanged. Some abandon the Inquisition, vanishing into exile beneath false identities. Others become radicals overnight, convinced that to forestall the Concord of Dissonance, every prediction must be fulfilled. And among the sealed cogitators that ring the chamber's core, a final augury pulses in silent repetition, its text visible only in the spectra of unlight. The pale choir stands at the threshold. Their hymn is the end of all divergence. There is a vault so deep beneath the conclave's bedrock that no auspec's pulse can trace its boundary. No map records its location. No sanctuary patrol walks its approach. It is not named in any archive. Among the Ocularians, it is called only the Silence. Some say the Silence was not built, but uncovered, a remnant from the dark age of technology, abandoned when the last custodians were erased by their own foresight. Others claim it was constructed by the first Ocularian, a chamber hollowed by centuries of augury, until even time itself receded in deference. All conjecture ends at the same impasse. No one has entered and returned with any memory intact. Yet there are records that persist. In the year 999 of M41, a detachment of Ordo Hereticus arbiters launched an unsanctioned incursion. Their ingress began with a seismic breach, plasma cutters scarring the basalt strata, melter charges liquefying the adamantium gates. Vox feeds captured the final moments before all contact failed. A single voice, fractured across multiple frequencies, spoke from the darkness. This is not your threshold. What followed was not violence but absence. Every arbiter's life sign vanished in the span of a heartbeat. Their locator beacons continued transmitting in perfect formation, unblinking, unbroken. When recovery teams arrived, they found only darkness and an unbroken floor where no footprints remained. In the decades that followed, the Silence became legend even among the Inquisition. The Puritans declared it a nexus of apostasy. The radicals called it the womb of all prophecy. To the Ocularians, it is neither. It is the final destination, where all augury completes itself and no question can be distinguished from its answer. Some whisper that the pale choir waits within, their voices entwined in a hymn too vast for any mortal cortex. Others believe the choir is the vault itself, a sentience without form that sustains the lattice of every vision ever spoken. But these are only theories birthed in ignorance. No witness has ever emerged to confirm them. What remains is the certainty that the Silence endures. No petition has succeeded in sealing its threshold. No sanctioned detonation has scarred its walls. Every attempt at erasure ends the same way. Auguries recited by unseen mouths, scribed in blood across the walls of conclave archives, repeating a single invocation that will not be silenced. The eye remains unclosed. The hymn approaches. There is no final record, no closure in the data, only a question that trembles in the darkness of that place, waiting for the moment when every divergence will collapse into one. And if the Ocularians are correct, if their visions have ever held any fragment of truth, then somewhere beyond that last threshold, the future already waits, unblinking.